As many. The chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Fox Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I actually want to begin where you left off and join in welcoming the C.I. Gibson team here this afternoon. I had a chance to speak to a few of them in the lobby downstairs. And notwithstanding the admonition of the Speaker, I want you to know, and notwithstanding what happens here, I want them to know this is the place to be. This is the place to be. The Brits have a thing of calling it the High Court of Parliament. And for every boy and girl in the Bahamas, this should be the place to be. And I still believe that this is the place to be. And everything your coaches are doing, everything that is done is being done to make sure your mind and your body are equipped to come and serve in a place like this. And I hope you never forget it. I just happened to be speaking to the start of a basketball tournament in the Fox Hill area on Easter Monday. And in speaking to the young men there, none of them, I think, reached the age, are 20 years of age yet. I explained to them that when I was a student in high school, I could not understand why physical education was a class in school. For the life of me, I couldn't understand what they had me running around the track for and all the rest of it. Exactly. It wasn't until, and I still can't play basketball to this day. Cannot. So, right, but I admire what you do. I admire what you do. One of the students, Mr. Roll, sitting in the front row, is one of my constituents, and I did go to see the actual final game, the first half of it. As I said, I make it a point that wherever my constituents are, I try to be, even though I may not understand what's happening on the court. But I know the ball has to go in the hoop. That's what it's called, right? Hoop? Yes, right. And you get 2 points. Sometimes 3. Okay. So
this is getting awfully complicated.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, and you know, it was a great game, and I really admire your skill and your feet, and to support your coaches for all the things they do, and particularly because we're dealing with this medical bill. One of the points, the main point I was asking the leader of the House to speak on this bill was to make again the public point that I had made to the young men in Fox Hill. This question about the life expectancy at birth of Bahamians in 2014. I believe that there's been a lot of public discussion about this back and forth. And I said to them, whatever the figures are today, and I'm going to come to the specific figures, we expect you to live to be at least 70 years of age. In order to reach 70 years of age, you have to take care of your life. And so what you're doing now, as your coaches teach you basketball, as you go to school, that's the fundamental lesson they are trying to provide to you, how to take care of your life so that you will reach the age of 70 and perhaps serve in this place, one day be old men and speaking to young men. Hopefully, of course, you will know the game of basketball, not like me, so you'll be able to tell them how to play. But I hope that you remember the day and remember that this is the place to be. Today, Mr. Speaker, is St. George's Day. Having grown up in the Valley, I would remember that every morning at 6 o'clock, the church bells would ring. The 23rd of April is a big festival day, and there would normally be a fair on Saturdays and the Patronal Festival on Sunday. So I imagine, I'm not sure there's going to be a fair, but the Patronal Festival is likely to take place on Wednesday. So I would like to, on Sunday, I would like to say to the people of St. George's, happy St. George's Day. I would also like to extend condolences to the family of the late Lockhart Turnquest, who hails from the settlement of Deadman's Key, Long Island, on his passing. He was a good friend, and he and his wife were good supporters of our cause. They were prominent, the wife is a prominent citizen in Long Island, as was he before his passing. And I know that that community is going to miss Lockhart Turnquest. And it is a sad occasion for me. I've had years, Captain Archie Marie, Lockhart Turnquest, going down every year just after independence, and I will certainly miss him. And I wish to extend to his wife and family condolences on his passing. I'm pleased to support this bill. This is a reforming statute in that it brings into the modern era the Medical Act, which is to be repealed and which is now some 4 decades old. It is designed to ensure clear standards in law and ethics in the medical practice and in society for the protection of the public. Let me add words of congratulations, those offered by the minister, to Dr. Mercelin Dahl-Regis, who is the Chief Medical Officer, for her appointment as the chair of the WHO Committee, I believe, on immunizations, and for her pioneering work on this bill. This bill is a labor of love for her, and I know that she is pleased that the bill is being presented and debated today. I cannot let this pass. He is one of my closest friends, Dr. Franklin Walking, and a former member of this place. And he, too, was a very active presence behind getting this bill to the House of Assembly. And you know, every year, I think I can say this, every year at Christmas, 3 people gather at his home for Christmas lunch, brunch, every year. Ackee and codfish sometimes, boiled fish other times, but mainly good company. The Member of Parliament for Bain and Grantstown, myself, and Dr. Walking. And we spoke about this bill. I'm sure he is overjoyed today to see that it has been brought into fruition. What is important is that it defines the practice of medicine, the types of doctor's licenses. It says how you can be licensed and what the standards are for licensing. And you know, the Member of Parliament for Mycal spoke to it, but doctors and lawyers are the twin professions in the country that end up running the Bahamas. With due respect to every other profession, I think they would still admit this, that, well, I'm not sure, unfortunately, but yeah, you're coming, but soon and round the corner. But you know, as a child, what do you want to be, a lawyer or a doctor? And of course, lawyers and doctors, people ask me why lawyers and doctors end up being in this place, and it's largely because I believe for economic reasons, lawyers and doctors don't work for other people. They work for themselves. And when you are an employee, it is very difficult to be in the House of Assembly, because House of Assembly means you get to say whatever you want to say. And, you know, sometimes you say the wrong thing, and your employer tells you, well, you can take a hike, and out goes your income. So that tends to be the reason why the profession is dominated by lawyers and doctors. Section 22.5 is especially interesting in this bill in that Clause 22.5 is especially interesting in that it provides for the new modern specialties, which would not have existed 40 years ago. Telemedicine has already been mentioned. Stem cells, that's another specialty which would not have existed 40 years ago. There's also the provision for a code of conduct, how you practice. And then there will also be the need for continuing education. Also of interest would be the grandfathering provision in Section 27, which allows people who've been practicing for more than 25 years in a particular specialty, but do not actually have the board-certified qualifications to be able to be grandfathered into the legislation as specialists. And this will be so under Section 26. Of course, they have only until the 31st of December 2014 to do that, but at least there is that provision. And there are many excellent doctors who are in that position today, and the legislation is sensitive to that. You have, as a doctor now, an obligation to have an annual license pursuant to Section 30, and it expires each year on the 31st of December. So this regime is implementing for the first time two types. The general license, which everybody will have to have, and then there are various categories within that general license, and then there is the specialist license, to which I just referred. Doctors have a special role to play in our society, a special role to play for the health care and well-being of our country. People look to them as the protectors of their health care and their well-being, both physical and psychological. And every citizen of the Bahamas has the right to health care and to have competent doctors take care and deliver proper health care to them. Competent doctors in an ethical and moral fashion. On the weekend, Mr. Speaker, I said I had the occasion to speak in my constituency. Most of the people who were sitting at this basketball game had not even reached the age of 20. On that same weekend, the same last weekend, two young men, one 29, the other 18, died of self-inflicted wounds in road traffic accidents. Now, one is 29, the other is 18. For the life of me, and I've expressed condolences because one of them is the son of a good friend of mine in Eleuthera. But they have to do with, and I said self-inflicted, they have to do with the use of motorcycles and how they use the motorcycles. And there's a young man in Fox Hill up and down on this motorbike. And from the time I have been, Mr. Tynes starts to laugh because he knows who I'm talking about. From the time I've been living in that area, I would tell this young man, look, I don't want you to even stop using the bike, but why don't put the helmet on? Just put a helmet on, because that would make a difference if there's an accident. Yeah, I'm going to do it. And then, you know, the next day you see him flying down the road again without the helmet. And, of course, now you have these situations, these two situations which obtained over the last weekend. And all of this is self-inflicted. And you wonder, what are we going to do to connect to that sector of the population that impacts something else which I'm going to be talking about? And I'm talking about life expectancy at birth. Now, to explain what life expectancy at birth, the demographers define life expectancy at birth as indicating the number of years a newborn infant would live if prevailing patterns of mortality at the time of its birth were to stay the same throughout its lifetime. So, to say that in another way, when I was born in 1953, I was trying to find the figures, but the figure that I can find is as far back as 1960, not 1953. But in 1960, so I'll use that as an approximation, the life expectancy at birth in the Bahamas overall was 62.2 years. So that means a child born, on average, in 1960 in the Bahamas would be expected, if all the conditions which affect mortality continued as if they were in 1960, that means they would survive to 62.2 years. Now, that means I'm pretty close up to that life expectancy at birth, having reached my 60th birthday on October of last year. Pretty close to the end. Women, if I went back to 1960, be pretty close to the end.
You go back to 53.
Right. And if you went back to 1953, I may well have exceeded it. I may well have exceeded it. The great joy about this discussion, though, is that life expectancy at birth can be changed by what a society does while you are growing up. So, during the time I was growing up, I got polio vaccines, both the stick and the oral one. And then there was smallpox and whooping cough and a number of vaccinations which were done while I was a child, which improved my chances of living a longer life. Because one of the things you will find, demographers will tell you, is that boys in the first year of life are more vulnerable than girls. So in the first year of life, more boy babies tend to die than girls. But in any event, during my lifetime, a number of factors. I think when I was a student at St. George's Kindergarten School, where I started out, they used to give us a glass of milk or a cup of milk every day. And that was designed, I think, to deal with calcium deficiencies. Right. So this was intended to improve the health care. Today, in the Bahamas, in 2014, women are now expected to live 76.8 years. That's abstracting from the 2010 census. A gain of about 1/3 of a year longer than it was in 2000. So from between the year 2000 and 2010, there was an improvement of about 1/3 of a year. So says the Bahamian Statistics Office. Bahamian men, on the other hand, are now expected to live 70.6 years, 6 months longer than they were expected to live a decade before 2010. But still, a difference of 6 years between the life expectancy of women and the life expectancy of men. And we'll disaggregate that in a second. The World Health Organization in PAHO, I'm advised, has been projecting that since 2010, they're saying that they're projecting a decline in the life expectancy at birth from 2010 to the present. And they give a number of factors for this. They said, 1, external trauma. 2, chronic non-communicable diseases. 3, HIV and AIDS. And 4, malignancies, including breast and prostate cancer, as factors which have been adversely affecting our life expectancy at birth. The one I disaggregated for the younger men, though, was that of the contribution to this decline amongst young males. Now, I appealed to them that day, the same appeal I made to them here today. I appealed to them. I said, look, you have to intervene to help save your own lives. By the choices you make, you can stretch your life out to 70. And we want you to live to 70, because when people die earlier, there's a loss of productive capacity in the society. So in my view, as a medical necessity, Mr. Speaker, we have to intervene to help save our young men, particularly since it is being said that the decline from the 76 years to 74 years, which is being projected by the IDB, is attributed almost 60%. Almost 60% of that decline is being attributed to the group of men between the ages of 15 and 44. 60% of the decline is being attributed to that group of men between 15 and 44 years of age. So we have a lot of work to do. And I commend the Minister of Health for the lead which he has taken in bringing this bill, in trying to reform our health care, and in also moving toward national health insurance. I commend the Minister. I recall that, looking at the facts, in 2001, this country budgeted in its budget $150 million on health. In 2012, we're spending some $300 million on health care directly in the budget, twice what we were spending in 2001. And if you add another $100 million or so, which we spend on insurance, including national insurance, that's about $400 million that the public sector contributes to health care directly in this Bahamas. And the question for us is, how do we prioritize the money which the government is spending? Here's what we inherited. We inherited, I'm advised, spending of 81% on curative care, 14% on preventative care, when we should in fact be spending more like 25% on preventative care. So say that again. 81% on curative care, 14% on preventative care, when we should be looking at 25% on preventative care. We spend 9.7% of our GDP on health care. 15.2% of our general government expenditure is on health care. And so what the minister's task is going to be, and it's not going to be easy, because you have a bureaucracy to fight, you have traditions to fight, is to be focused on people, to meet people where they are. Not the big buildings that the member for East Grand Bahama was talking about have been constructed in this place or the next, where the government is struggling now to find resources to man, but trying to actually deal with people and their issues, when the question of how you serve them when they appear, and also to take care of their needs so that the needs are preventative rather than dealing with cures. My favorite one is adolescent health. I've had specialists come into Fox Hill looking at what we can do to intervene on this question of adolescents and their care, which is a specialty which developed when I first served in the House of Assembly, or shortly before I first served in the House of Assemblies. I've been saying about doctors that one of the things doctors should do is to always operate from a neutral platform. That is, if you're people-focused, not making moral judgments on the patient who presents to you, but to provide the care for whoever presents himself or herself to you. We saw, there were movies just recently, we saw the issues of prejudice that affected the public policy with regard to the initial movements on HIV and AIDS, which still plague us to some extent today. You can ask the Member of Parliament, the Minister of Health, how his practice was adversely affected because he took it upon himself to be a leader in this nation and in this region to fight the scourge of HIV and AIDS. But he did it without prejudice, just provided a service for the needs of people. During 1979 to 1981, the life expectancy for Bahamian men and women was 64.3 for Bahamian men and 72.1 for Bahamian women. During 89 to 91, it increased from 68.2 for women from 64.3 to 68.2, and then for men, and for women from 72.1 to 75.3. And from 1999 to 2001, we had similar increases. But everywhere you look at these statistics, when you look back, you will see that there continues to be this difference between men and women. Both myself and the Prime Minister, speaking in Trinidad and Tobago, at the lectures we were invited to at the University of the West Indies, spoke of the need for there to be an intervention to help males and to understand why this is developing and to do something to assist in the development of males and their general welfare and health and life expectancy. And this is a difficult phenomenon to discuss today, and I wonder if you can oblige me, because I will be finished within a few minutes. The story of women and discrimination, and how difficult it is, given the evidence that we see, to understand how women, for example, feel even today about the question of discrimination against them. Because when you look around at the society, you would think that all's well with women, because women are succeeding. I predicted that by the year, within 30 years, I believe women will outnumber men in the House of Assembly. If you look at the education that women are arming themselves with on this issue. But so it is difficult. No, I understand that point. The other day, Mr. Speaker, I was at a meeting in Haiti the other day, and I started the meeting by saying, good morning. Before I started my speech, I started the meeting by saying, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And then I looked around, and I saw that both the Haitian delegation and the Bahamian delegation were all male. There were no women in the room. And none of us, it had occurred to us, none of us had even considered that as a factor. So I understood immediately what women feel when they see things like this happening. But at the same time, there is a ticking time bomb in our society with this inattention to young men and boys. So I wish to use this platform today to repeat that plea made in Trinidad and Tobago by the Prime Minister, that some special attention needs to be concentrated on the well-being of young men and boys as a means of improving our general welfare. I think that the society could make no finer investment than doing and making such a concerted effort. I myself described it as a state of emergency. And so, in commending this bill, I urge the doctors, Mr. Speaker, to take up their role in an ethical and competent manner in the best interest of the Bahamian public. And I once again thank and commend the Minister, his officials, for bringing this bill, to the two individuals, Dr. Dal Regis and Dr. Walking, for their work in crafting this legislation, and I commend the bill to the House. Thank you.